magic coming. Oh, there's magic coming. Oh, there's magic coming. Where you gonna be tonight? Oh, there's magic coming. Oh, there's magic coming. There's magic coming. Get ready for the rest of your life.
Hello and welcome to SassafrasCast, a podcast full of witchy insights to help you lead your sassiest life. I am Rorie Kelly, a tarot reader, singer-songwriter, and all-around personal growth nerd from Long Island, New York. In just a moment, we will begin the Witchy Weather Report, but first, a shout out to my patrons. If you didn't know, you can support this podcast for $1 a month or more. I record these episodes live, and my patrons get a private YouTube link before each one so they can tune in for the live recording, hang out in the chat, ask questions, and get them answered in real time. And you can be a part of this at patreon.com/Sassafras Tarot. Patrons also get access to my Discord server where we talk about all things witchy and wonderful, and a shout out in every episode. Are you ready? Here we go. Thank you so much, Amanda Curry, Melissa, Rachel Miller, Grayson, Millie Orozco, Ruby, Rebecca Jones, Brittany, Hannah Westlock, Jennifer McPhail, Ondine PM, singer-songwriter for PM Edition, and Deanne Miller. I am so grateful that you are in my life. I am so grateful that you are here supporting this work and hopefully doing it alongside me, because this podcast is a personal growth journey that I am on with you. I never want to position myself as like a expert type person or put myself as on some type of a pedestal. I more want to present these musings about what has been helpful and meaningful to me in my life and put them out there for the world and say, hey, how about you? Because that is, to me, the way that we can heal and grow together. Growth and learning through community is where it's at, as far as I am concerned. Okay? Okay. All right, today we are going to talk about creating personal milestones for yourself. But before we jump into that, I'm going to pull a tarot card of the day for the Witchy Weather Report. And I'm going to share with you that I am about to have a personal milestone myself. I am turning 40 in, 4 days from now. I'm like, what day is it? The memory's already going. I'm turning 40 in 4 days from now, which I think officially puts me in middle age. Maybe if I were being a little more honest with myself, I've been there, but 40 is where you can no longer really deny it. And it's a big milestone. It's a big year. Big things have happened for me in this past year. My birthday is always an important touchstone for me, and I take time to reflect every year on that. And I thought that today would be a great day to talk about personal milestones and how to create them for yourself and how to make them meaningful. So that's the topic of the day. First, hydration checkpoint. If you are playing the Rorie Kelly drinking game, take a drink with me. I recommend you stay hydrated. You could do other types of drinks too if you feel like it, but hydration is important. All right, first we have the Witchy Weather Report, where I pull a card and just kind of reflect on the synchronicity of the moment. If you're listening to this in anything close to real time, I'm broadcasting this live for my patrons on August 24th. It will probably come out a couple days after my birthday, August 30th or 31st. If you're listening to this, Mercury is about to or just went out of retrograde, so now Mercury is direct. Mercury in retrograde or in the microwave or in the lemonade, however you want to put it, is, I think, the thing that has made its way into the public consciousness most from astrology. And maybe because it happens a few times a year, or maybe because everyone kind of makes a lot of noise about it in the witchy community. And it's supposed to really affect things like our communication, technology, and travel, because Mercury rules over those areas, and when it goes retrograde, it means things can go haywire. So that's the moment, astrologically speaking. We also just had a big full moon, a super blue moon in Aquarius, and this moon was supposed to be kind of confronting. It was certainly kind of confronting for me, and in a very positive way. I say that perhaps because I'm an Aquarius rising, but it's about confronting us with new information that we can no longer afford to deny. It's about confronting us with information of like, this is the reality. How, now you know. Now you can't unknow it. How shall you respond? That is very much the energy of a full moon in Aquarius. It's a crisis of consciousness. And now, as the moon is waning, again, if you're listening to this in close to real time, we have an opportunity to kind of assess what we wish to let go of. Waning moons favor us letting go rather than drawing in. If all we do all the time is manifesting, then it's like trying to live by only breathing in all the time, right? If all we're doing is bringing into our lives, bringing into our lives, bringing into our lives, there are seasons where that's correct. But if that's the only thing we do, it's as though we are trying to just sustain our entire life on an in-breath. And though in-breaths are what bring us the oxygen that we need to survive, we need to also let out the carbon dioxide that is no longer helping our body, so that we can make room for the new oxygen. We need to have in-breaths and out-breaths. And the moon cycle, if you choose to live by the moon cycles, allows you to kind of do that in your personal life. And I submit to you that this is a useful practice, whether or not you believe that there's any special woo-woo reason to do it, that it's a useful practice just psychologically and individually to give yourself an opportunity to have periods of your life where you are focusing on growth and expansion, and periods of your life where you make milestones, the new moon and the full moon, which is the topic of this podcast, and also periods of your life where you are embracing a slower pace, embracing letting go, embracing decluttering not just your physical space, but perhaps your heart and your mind, where we are allowing ourselves to make room for the new things we wish to bring into our lives by taking stock of what's already there and going, this brings me joy, this deserves to go. That's the energy of the waning moon. It's an important time. And I'm going to pull us a card now with the intention that whenever you are listening to this, whether you're listening to it right as it comes out, or whether you've discovered my podcast years later and are binging and just happened upon this one, in which case, hi, thank you, human from the future. How's the future? Don't tell me, I'm terrified. In either case, my intention when I pull this card is that it has some meaning for you right now in the moment. So here we go. I'm reading with the Way Home Tarot by Autumn Whitehurst and Bakara Wintner. I hope I didn't get those two names mixed up. Let me see if I did it right. Way Home Tarot, Autumn Whitehurst, and Bakara Wintner. We love to give credit. I love this deck. I'm obsessed with it. I've been reading with it for the last few months, pretty much monogamously. I'm a serial monogamist with tarot decks and music. I'll get into one artist for a while. I'll get into one tarot deck for a while. It just feels good to kind of like put myself into that lens. I don't know. This is who I am as a person. Our card of the moment is the Nine of Cups. This is about happiness and personal happiness, and it's specifically about the personal happiness that we build for ourselves. Happiness that is not necessarily dependent on our circumstances, although that doesn't mean we can't make an effort to create those circumstances for ourselves, but it's about celebrating what we already have, celebrating joy, giving ourselves treats and rest and fun and downtime. This literally, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to see me holding up the card. The Nine of Cups here depicts a beautiful either sunrise or sunset. Pick your poison. I'm more of a sunset girl because I prefer to be asleep when sunrise happens. And we have some palm trees that are being backlit by that beautiful sunrise or set. And we have these 9 cups that are in a hammock, just resting, just watching the beautiful show that Mother Nature is putting on. And it really is about just choosing to be in the moment, embracing yourself as you are in the moment, acknowledging to yourself that right this minute, at this very moment, You are already deserving of happiness. You are already deserving of joy. You are already deserving of receiving all the blessings that are available to you and choosing to sink into them and enjoy them to the extent that you're able to. That doesn't mean we pretend life is perfect. There's always a journey. There's always new things to learn. There's always new things to embrace. But it's important to give ourselves these moments that are simply about soaking in and counting our blessings. And that I'm going to also say, as someone who takes do your best a little too seriously, raise your hand if you're team neurodivergent, and when you hear do your best, you interpret it very, very literally to mean like my best, as in the best I can possibly do without any regard for my self-care or any other circumstances. And I've learned over the years that that is not what do your best should really mean. What do your best should mean is show up to the best of your ability with consideration for the complex set of circumstances around you, as well as your own needs and your own self-care. That's what do your best should really mean. So we're doing our best at this time to embrace our happiness as is, while acknowledging that, yeah, there are things we still would like to see change in our lives, but we are choosing in this moment to give ourselves the best possible moment we can and just sinking into it. And for me, that makes me think of the feeling of getting into a hot bath, like the first moments when I get in, and I am someone who likes the water inappropriately hot in a bath. So like I get in and the heat both makes me hot and cold because it like makes tingles on my skin because it's a dramatic temperature change. And that moment puts me back in my body and allows me to just feel into joy, which is an opportunity we should give ourselves early and often. That is the message of the moment, friends. It's the Nine of Cups. I invite you to feel into joy. I invite you to experience what that may look like for you. And I will say that it goes hand in hand with your more difficult emotions. We're not doing toxic bypassing, because the truth is, in order to feel into joy, we have to also be willing and able to feel into our sadness, to feel into our grief, to feel into our anger. We can't selectively turn certain emotions on and off. We can't positive vibes only. That's pretend. So we have to be willing to feel our feelings kind of ongoingly, so that when we choose to feel into joy, we can truly feel it. And we're not feeling a backlog of all the stuff we've been suppressing instead of the joy we want to feel. We're feeling the joy and gratitude of the moment because we have been showing up for our feelings along the way. That is the emotionally healthy way to do that. Now I've given you that little psychology lecture, and we're going to talk about our topic of the day. Today we are talking about making a milestone for yourself. This is something that I'm passionate about, and I don't know what facet of my personality kind of rules this, but I've always been someone who loves milestones. My birthday always feels like a fresh start, and it falls at the end of August. I'm a Virgo, and it also coincides with the school year, which starts around late August, early September, depending on where you live, and runs through May or June, depending on where you live. And so there's always that fresh start energy that I still remember, even though I'm 40 years old. It's been a minute since I've been in school, but that fresh energy at the beginning of the semester where you're excited about learning. If this is who you are as a person, it's definitely who I am as a person. You're excited about learning. You're excited about kind of the clean slate of starting things and trying to do your best and trying to bring your best version of yourself that you have available to what you're showing up for at this time in your life. It's almost like a mini New Year's energy for me at that time, especially because for me, it is a new year. It's my birthday. Hydration checkpoint. Then we're going to talk about why you should care about milestones, and then we're going to go into how to do it. This is one of those topics that can be as witchy or mundane as you like. And I try to straddle the line with this podcast. I am a witchy bitch. I love to follow the moon and check what's going on in the astrological world. I really recommend my friend Sheila Haidt. If you follow her on Facebook, she does a weekly astrological update, and it's really lovely. And I love to kind of have that update at the start of the week to get me going. I love to read tarot cards. I love to connect with my guides and my intuition and make decisions in that very both embodied and spiritual way. And for me, that is a big part of my personal development. But I never want to be so ingrained into my own spiritual path that I limit my ability to share and exchange ideas with others on a different path or on no spiritual path, right? I strongly believe, and I'm someone who spent most of my life on no spiritual path. And by the way, like, my life wasn't empty and I wasn't unhappy. That wasn't a negative thing for me. I have come to be a very spiritual person, and I wasn't always, and like, I was fine when I wasn't, because I still believed in personal growth. And that is what drives both my spiritual path and my individual development as a human being. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can make milestones a part of our personal growth, a part of our trajectory as a human being, regardless of where you're at spiritually. But yes, I will offer some witchy suggestions as well. Cheers, y'all. Hydration checkpoint. Why do milestones matter? I have heard from so many people, and I have a history of dating these people, how meaningless New Year's is. It's New Year's in particular that gets hated on. No, it's not. It's also other holidays that are maybe viewed as Hallmark holidays or viewed as kind of like holidays for quote unquote sheeple, you know, like Valentine's Day is in there, Mother's Day and Father's Day, and the take that I hear all the time is like, this isn't a meaningful, this is an arbitrary day. You could celebrate this on any day. Like, what does it matter? You know, like, it's not real. We made up the calendar. And, you know, like, you should be showing up for your growth every day and not just make some big meaningless push at the beginning of the year and forget it in 2 weeks. And you should be showing up for your loved ones every day and not just lining corporate pockets by buying them gifts on one particular day of the year. That's the take. And here is my loving rebuttal. It super is arbitrary. Like, I'm going to start with an agreement. It is arbitrary. We did make up the calendar, and the calendar has shifted from the time we human beings made it up and is not super rooted in anything super real other than the fact that, like, we do go around the sun once every 365-ish days, and that's built into our calendar. So a calendar year does mean something in the very real physics sense. Although I don't know if that has a huge bearing on our lives, but traveling through the seasons, if you live in a place where there are seasons, that result from that journey around the sun, does feel like it is a milestone worth acknowledging to me. And yes, it's arbitrary. You could do it at any point in time. However, everything that we make meaning out of is ultimately arbitrary, right? It's arbitrary until we decide to make meaning out of it, and then it is no longer arbitrary or random. Then we have ascribed meaning to it, and guess what? Just as we ascribed meaning to the calendar, we have a right to ascribe meaning as we see fit to different points in time, to different points in our lives, to different circumstances. Ritual is what we're tapping into when we celebrate these recurring milestones. And whether you choose to celebrate them kind of with all of society, or whether you choose to create milestones for yourself personally, and whether you choose to do this on a schedule or just kind of do it ad hoc, it's worth doing. It's worth doing for our psychology and for our personal growth. It's powerful to inform ourselves that time has passed, and we can look back at the progress we have made, and we can look forward at where we hope to be. And it's powerful in the same way it is powerful to go to these other external measures of growth that we have in society at this moment in history. We have things like people from many cultures celebrate birthdays. People from many cultures celebrate some type of graduation around like scholarly pursuits, right? There are often rites of passage into adulthood, and these all happen at different and various times. But what they all have in common is they allow us to acknowledge time has passed, and they allow us to look back and say, look how far I've come. Look what's happened. And as a person turning 40 who has some adorable two nephews and a niece who are incredibly wonderful kids, I feel more and more moved every year by the milestones because I watch them grow in leaps and bounds. Like, I literally watched my oldest nephew, Caleb, come into the world. And it was very meaningful to be around for the start of a human's life, and to just celebrate the fact that there is a new human coming into the world, and we're all wishing the best for him. And the best is not all of what he'll get, right? He'll get the mixed bag that life is, like everybody does, but it's been meaningful watching him grow and watching his sister and brother come into the world and grow as well. And it's become more important than ever to me to celebrate these individual milestones, because day to day you miss it. My sister misses it to some extent because she lives with him. She doesn't see the growth that happens over the course of 6 months. Literal growth where he's a little taller and, like less tangible growth where he's making jokes that are more sophisticated than he would have made a year ago. And he, is like elements of his personality are changing and evolving. And when you're with someone day to day to day, you don't necessarily notice those small changes. And that includes in yourself. You don't necessarily notice those small changes. But for me, Aunt Rorie, when I show up at Caleb's birthday, he's also a Virgo, so it's going to be pretty soon. When I show up at Caleb's birthday, I will get to reflect on what his last birthday was like. I will also get to reflect on the last time I saw him, which wasn't like 5 minutes ago, as it will be for my sister. And for him, it was, like I think earlier this summer. So I love getting to see my niece and nephews, and I love to see them all the friggin' time. So it's not me saying like it's great that I spend less time with them, but my point is that every time I see them, I get to have that moment of like, wow, like I'm watching this human that I care about evolve and grow. And when we give ourselves that opportunity, it really, really helps us. It helps us mark progress, because many of us, especially as we get into adulthood, feel like life feels like a treadmill or a hamster wheel, and we keep trying to make progress. And the truth about progress is every time you make progress, your own knowledge and view of the world and yourself and your own capabilities expands. So every time we move a little bit forward, we become also more aware of how much further we could go. And it can feel like, wow, I keep moving forward, but I never hit the goal, because the goalpost keeps moving, because our view of what is possible keeps moving. That's actually good, right? It reflects our capacity for ongoing growth and development as a human being. And it's great to be always growing. I would prefer that to being stagnant. But when we're in the thick of it, day to day to day to day to day, yeah, I'm doing the growth thing, it's hard today. When we're in the thick of it, we don't always get to see how much we are growing without looking back and looking forward. Because one day at a time, yes, there are moments where we have a crazy aha moment and it colors the whole rest of our lives. I've had a few of those. I'm grateful for them, both the really painful ones and the really wonderful ones. But more often than not, it's just like kind of, today's not that different from yesterday, which wasn't that different from the day before. You know what I mean? And so as a result, we get this hamster wheel feeling, we get this treadmill feeling. And when we allow ourselves to have milestones and really sink into them is when we can acknowledge our progress. And it becomes a ritual that we can embrace. And ritual really tunes us into our subconscious mind. Ritual helps our subconscious orient ourselves in the space of our lives. Ritual helps our subconscious understand, I was here, now I'm there. And here's where I'm going, and here's what I believe now, and here's what I feel now, and here's what's important to me. And it helps us, especially if we're on a healing journey, because those journeys, healing is very painful. It's a painful type of growth. And I say that, and healing's so worthwhile. It's worthwhile so that you can feel life better. And I liken often like personal, like internal healing to physical healing, where it's usually like it's often painful, right? If you get a wound, if you break your leg, if you whatever, like, and have some period of healing, it's painful, it's annoying, it feels like it's hobbling you. Like if you have a broken bone, you have to like favor that bone and like wear a thing and like plan your life around your healing. And it's worth doing, and it's deeply annoying, right? Like it's annoying, it's painful, it's frustrating. And then at the end of it, though, you're healed and you get to walk around again, right? So you're like, okay, eye on the prize, I'll do it. Emotional healing is much the same. It's worth doing and it's frustrating. And you have to kind of like nurture yourself around it, because when you go back and say, I'm going to look at this wound so I can heal for it, I'm going to peel back the layers of the onion, the part of you that you're peeling back is like, oh God, what are you doing? And then you have to be gentle with yourself and plan your life around a little bit, and like understand that there are areas that are going to make you really feel some pain while you're going through this healing journey. And if you're on a healing journey, life can start to feel like, okay, I just keep feeling pain for like, okay, I'm facing my feelings every day, just like I faced them yesterday, and it feels pretty stressful. And when we give ourselves milestones, we allow ourselves to see how far we've come, and we allow ourselves to feel the joy of the accomplishment we've done so far in our healing journey. And it helps. And when we create ritual, that allows the milestone to become meaningful and to stick, right? Just like there is no confusion. If you graduate from high school, there is no confusion after the day of graduation whether you are still a high schooler. No, you are not. There is no confusion 6 weeks before graduation whether you are still a high schooler. Yes, you are, right? We have that milestone. It's like it's graduation. We did this thing. We got there. We hit the goalpost. We have new goalposts now, but we're taking a moment to affirm our hard work in doing this. And it gives us a chance to celebrate ourselves. It gives us a chance to look back on the parts that were hard and see what we did to overcome them. And it gives us a chance to look back on the parts that were good and relive them and feel the joy of that again, and think about how we can keep more of that in our lives going forward. And it gives us finally a chance to look ahead and ask ourselves, what is my dream now? I've hit the end of a chapter. What's next? And when we create those opportunities for ourselves on a very personal level, it allows us to create a life that is more authentic and genuinely lived. A life where we are truly feeling our moments and owning our successes, including the deeply personal ones that we may not choose to share with anyone else, and learning about ourselves, owning those accomplishments, and getting to craft for ourselves a life that is truly, truly heart-centered. So let's talk about making milestones for ourselves, creating these rituals for ourselves so that we can honor our growth. So that just like when I see my nephew at my birthday and I'm at his birthday, and I can be that aunt who's like, well, you've grown so much, which I learned not to say, because I always felt when I was a kid, it sounded very condescending. But I can have the moment, right? I can have the moment of being like, wow, like this, this kid is really growing into a complex and nuanced human, and I'm watching this evolution happen, and it's really special and meaningful. And we deserve to have those moments with ourselves, especially after childhood. They're scattered throughout childhood, and it's honestly as much for our parents and those around us as for us, right? It's both. We get to celebrate, we get to have our accomplishments reflected back to us as kids, and our parents all get to be like, oh my God, I can't believe it, you're getting so big. Our parents get to collectively freak out about the passage of time while also loving watching your growth. And then as we get older, we either create and invest in those milestones for ourselves, or we lose that very important factor of having our accomplishments and our growth and our journey reflected back to us. Because that's what milestones are. We hold a mirror up to ourselves. We're like, see, we did this. It's like a magic mirror where we can look and say, where was I 1 year ago? Here I am now. Wow, look at the difference. So we can do this with existing milestones if we wanna. We can do this at New Year's. I do. And there's many different ways to approach that. I think I did an episode about New Year's and how to make resolutions or dreams or goals that were healthy rather than self-flagellating at some point. I think it's meaningful to look back and look forward. And I think it's meaningful to do some goal setting, and goal setting that feels both realistic in terms of not overextending yourself, but unrealistic in terms of allowing yourself to dream big rather than kind of like squeezing your dreams into what you think you might be able to accomplish. That's the line we have to walk. I do that at birthdays as well. We do that at anniversaries. I was just at a recommitment ceremony for a couple that has been married for 20 years. And I have to say, they're kind of a goals couple for me. They really are two people who do the work. And to my outside eye, because it's not like I'm, it's not like I have a candid camera on them at all hours or anything like that, but to my outside eye, I watch them continue to be ongoingly very invested in themselves and each other, like in that order, in their personal growth and in their connection with each other and their decision to show up each day for their marriage, for their relationship, and see it through new eyes each day. Not get that glazed feeling of like, well, today was pretty much the same as yesterday, tomorrow will probably be pretty much the same as today, but allow themselves the perspective that each day is a joyful miracle unfolding. And I think that's very beautiful, and that is what we do when we create milestones for ourselves. We give ourselves that perspective. So we can do this with an existing milestone, like a birthday or an anniversary or New Year's, or pick your poison. We can do this if you're someone of the pagan persuasion with the wheel of the year, or if you're of not the pagan persuasion by like kind of the generally celebrated holidays in, your country, like there's like, I don't know, a certain number of US bank holidays that are scattered throughout the year that most people get off from work or school or whatever, and that acknowledge different things, and we can lean into them if we so choose or not. You can also create milestones for yourself. And when you create milestones for yourself, it doesn't have to be based on, this many days in the calendar have gone by, which can feel a little arbitrary. Like, yeah, okay, the planet took a journey around the sun. What does that have to do with me? I didn't do anything. It's a planet did it all by itself, And it is like, I think it's useful because a year is a good chunk of time. So it's useful usually to have a milestone around that time. But sometimes we need a milestone based on what we have done. Graduation is like that, right? And I especially think of college graduations where there are different types of students. There are people who go back to school either at an accelerated pace because they want to move through their degree and get moving with whatever, a new career or a new direction in life, or at a reduced pace because they are working and functioning, and have other parts of their lives that are not just about going to school. So we graduate, and it can represent any number of years of work, right? It could be like kind of the 4-year track in the United States is what people kind of expect the length of a college degree to take. But if you're someone who took longer because you took a gap year, or took longer just because you wanted to focus on other aspects of your life or needed to work and support yourself or whatever, then it might represent more years than that, If you are someone who pushed through and worked on this, took the summer classes and crammed as many credits in, it might represent fewer. And in either case, what it represents is not the passage of time, it's the dedication you poured in to reaching a goal and the fact that you got there. And at the end of the day, if we're going to continue with this college education metaphor, like the piece of paper isn't it, right? It's the friends we made along the way. Well, it's everything that you learned, including some things you probably forgot because you crammed them in and took a test and forgot them the next day. You know what I mean? But it represents more growth than merely academic growth because that time in your life passed, and because you didn't just learn academic material, you learned how to face the different challenges in your life that came alongside you pursuing that degree, you going on that journey. And this is true of anything in life, any journey or accomplishment in life. It's interesting that I've chosen to hyperfixate here on college degrees because I don't possess one. And I don't actually have any regrets about that. But there are big goals that have taken me years to achieve that I have gone after and created milestones for myself out of those goals. Leaving my day job and becoming a full-time creative individual was a part of that. And I know that anniversary. It's the middle of summer. It's July 11th, which is easy to remember, 7/11. And having that milestone like come around every year, Facebook reminds me, this is how many years I've been self-employed. It's nice to have that moment. It's nice to have that moment of reflection because for me, it's very personal. For me, I remember the years when I pushed and pushed and worked 2 jobs at once, and I was doing so much overwork so that I could build the career I needed in order to safely exit my old career and still, pay my bills and eat in the New York City metro area. And there were so many times during that push where I was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to make it. I don't know if I'll ever get there. And so many different feelings that came along with that. And there were, it was both a lot of just showing up for the real work and also the emotional work of continuing to find ways to find hope, continuing to find ways to ask myself how I could show up better for myself along this journey, because it was a marathon, not a sprint. And I was so in it. It was the biggest thing in my life for quite a few years. It was the most important thing in my life that I was working on for quite a few years. And now I've crossed that bridge. And now that date comes around. It's, right around July, I kind of look around myself and I'm like, remember how I didn't know I would be able to be here, right? And now every year that passes, I'm like, one more year, and I like the first year was really important because a lot of small businesses fail within the first year. Getting through 2020 was a personal milestone for me because 2020, and with every year I look back and I'm able to remind myself, this is something that I didn't know I'd ever be able to do. I was pushing and crossing my fingers and pushing and learning how to be better to myself and learning how to create this much growth and trajectory change in my life. And just like also felt like I was flying by the seat of my pants the whole time, like, oh God, I might not make it, right? And it's beautiful for me now to look back and be like, I did though. And the fact that I can look back at that reminds me to have hope. It reminds me that the things that are so important to me to get through now, where I'm like, I'm not going to make it, I'm not going to make it. I'm like, well, you made it that time. And especially around things like that, where it's a personal goal, you may or may not have received support. I didn't receive a lot of emotional support around that goal. I received more people thinking they were being supportive by telling me, that's pretty unrealistic. Maybe you shouldn't do it. And which, by the way, don't tell your friends that who are trying to quit their day job. That's not supportive. They already know about the reality. It just makes it harder for them because now they feel like not only do they have to do it, but they have to do it without emotional support. So just a little sidebar for you. The best way to be supportive is to tell people, like, I believe in you, how can I help? Or I believe in you, do you want to talk about your plan? Do you want to bounce ideas off of me? To be someone who is a believing mirror for them, to use a Julia Cameron term, rather than a wet blanket, to use another Julia Cameron term. Julia Cameron wrote The Artist's Way and a number of other really wonderful personal development books. So when we create these opportunities for ourselves to look backwards, it allows us to feel that we can look forwards. So we can choose to make our milestones out of things that we've accomplished that may have no meaning to anyone else. Like early July doesn't mean anything to anyone else, but it means a lot to me. Similarly, if you marry someone, your anniversary may not mean anything to anyone else, but it probably means a lot to you and to the person whom you married. And we can also create milestones for ourselves in the moment. We can be like, especially around things like healing and growth, we can identify, what is the thing I want to feel? What is it? Like, is it a certain belief that I want to not carry with me anymore? Is it a certain feeling that I want to cultivate in my life? Is it self-friendship, right? And especially around things like self-friendship and our self-relationship, we celebrate milestones with people that we care about. We celebrate anniversaries. On Facebook, it gives you like your friend-iversary with people, which is, a little bit highfalutin of Facebook to be like, this is the day you guys became friends on Facebook, as if Facebook is like the arbiter of friendship, right? But it is still meaningful. I see those anniversaries come up with people who are dear to me, and I'm not like, oh yeah, like thank goodness we found each other on this social media site, but I am like, I'm really grateful that person is in my life. What if we gave ourselves a personal anniversary? It could be our birthday or it could be something else. It could be the day we simply decided to commit to being a friend to ourselves. What if we decided to show up for ourselves in some kind of regular way so that we can check in on our progress? Because often healing work is harder to measure, except it's not. We can give ourselves metrics around that, and it's worth doing. For me, one of the things I remember starting therapy around the time I moved into this house, so it must have been a hot minute ago. I remember starting therapy, and one of the things I said in my very first session was, I want to work on the nobody likes me's, because when things get hard, that's where my brain goes. I get a case of the nobody likes me's, and it's very difficult for me to shake, and I don't want to have to go there all the time. And I also think that it makes it harder for me because there's like social anxiety and stuff that plays into that. It makes it harder for me to feel connected with the people who actually do friggin' like me. You know what I mean? And that's what I told my therapist I wanted to work on, the nobody likes me's. And that is a whole host of things, right? And what I can tell you, looking back at that time, is I get the nobody likes me's a whole lot less. And I may never get them. But when I start to get them, it now is an early warning system. It's now like something's out of whack because you've done so much work around this that it is no longer the normal noise in your head. So when it comes up, it tells me I need to take care of myself and I need to look around and see what's affecting me. What is it that's put me back in the nobody likes me's? And so now, rather than being a constant buzz of self-deprecation, the nobody likes me's are more like a smoke alarm, and it goes off and it's like either time to change the battery, meaning time for some scheduled self-care maintenance that perhaps you've been neglecting, right? Or it means like there's a problem, right? Like if the nobody likes me's are coming up, it might mean that I'm like spending too much time around someone who is kind of toxic and all give and no take. Or it might mean that I have said yes to something I should have said no to, or what have you. It's an alarm system. And what's really cool about that and creating that metric for myself, which I do revisit as I think about like how long I've been in therapy, I look at that and I'm like, I just remember that conversation with my therapist. So it's come up, Something that has been very, very painful for me for most of my life has actually turned into something that is useful and helps me take good care of myself. Now, when I get the nobody likes me's, I'm like, oh, this emotion is helping me. This experience, because it's like a melange of emotions and thoughts, is helping me. It is helping me see that I need to make a change to take better care of myself because the nobody likes me's invariably come up when I am not getting my needs met. And so it's a cue and it allows me to take an appropriate action. And so now it's no longer a crippling weight. Now it's a valuable alarm system, which, by the way, is an evolution of how you can start to look at all of your different emotional situations, that like it can be an alarm system. However, for those of us who have experienced like mental health crisis or have experienced mental health conditions or had periods in our lives where depression or anxiety or what have you was kind of omnipresent, well, then what's happening is the alarm is pretty much going off 24/7, right? It's like you have an alarm, a smoke alarm in your house that is a little broken and it just goes off every day and you just can't stop it, but you don't want to not have a smoke alarm, but also your smoke alarm just keeps going off every day, and that's when the alarm system is malfunctioning, and it too is a signal, right? It's a signal that like serious attention needs to be paid so you can get yourself back to a place where those emotions are serving their function for you rather than paralyzing you. And looking back and looking forward is what allows us to have and experience this kind of growth. We're going to grow anyway, but growing without acknowledging your growth feels harder and feels less empowering and makes us feel more nervous about the future. Because when I acknowledge my growth, I can't help but acknowledge that I've come through difficult things and I've accomplished difficult things, and therefore I probably can again. So it's more important than ever, and I would say it's especially important to make a milestone, maybe just because at times when you really need a faith injection. And when I say faith, know that I am not talking about God. That is not a word I really use on this podcast. I do not mean faith in the divine. I mean faith in yourself. I mean faith that life can get better if you are willing to believe it can get better and apply your own brain and your own two hands to work on it. That is the type of faith that I am talking about. I am talking about the faith that if I show up for it, yes, I can have positive change. That is the most important faith I have ever cultivated in my life. And I now do have some level of spiritual faith, but I'm here to tell you the most important faith I've ever cultivated is the faith in myself, the faith that if I show up, that things will improve. And when we create milestones for ourselves, we get those faith injections. And so if you're having a time of struggle right now, might I suggest you create a milestone right now and name it anything you want. And you can celebrate it every year after this or never again or something in between. But might I suggest you take a milestone right now and look back at, whatever you feel like, like 6 months, a year. If your life has been really a hellscape of tumultuous activity lately, 1 month might do it. Sometimes we go through those periods of change where it feels so dramatic and our life does change in a very unsettling way day to day and week to week. I've been in the middle of one of those this summer. Like a 1 month milestone actually makes sense to me because I have grown a lot in the last month. And that's also what happens and why it's worth taking a step back when we're having the tower moments in our lives, when we're having the moments where life throws stuff at us and we have to react, or sometimes we are the tower. Sometimes we make a dramatic decision that throws our life out of whack because we know we have to course correct. Because we're like, oh shit, I've been on the wrong track and I have to fix it by making a change, by breaking up with someone, by leaving a toxic job, by whatever it is, right? And by choosing sobriety, whatever it may be. When we make those big dramatic changes in our lives, we become the tower. We become the element destabilizing our lives because we're like, the things that I have come to rely on as stable are actually not long-term healthy. So I have to destabilize so I can move myself over to a new path. And at those times, whether life throws it at us or we throw it at ourselves, invariably, A, we are growing like a weed, and B, we feel like a weed. Meaning, we feel like we are trying to grow through a crack in the friggin' sidewalk, and the sun is beating down on us, and we don't even know what kind of nourishment we need because we're a weed, and that's not in a book. We don't know. We're just weird and weedy, and we just need something, but we're not sure what. And we're just like feeling it out and doing our best every day. And that tends to result in massive personal growth. And it also feels pretty crazy and dysfunctional along the way. In fact, it's quite functional if you're willing to show up for it, right? If you don't try to go to bed and blot it out. If you're willing to be like, yeah, I will do my best for it. And again, we define best as what we are able to show up with in the scheme of things, considering our self-care and considering our personal needs and considering our humanity. It's not our best that we re-traumatize and re-trigger ourselves every 30 seconds. That's not our best. That's too much. If we're willing to show up in a sane way, and when I say sane, I mean in a way that is loving to us, the way we might expect a beloved friend to show up. So not overdoing it, but not underdoing it anyway. It's often we arrive at a healthier line if we think about someone we love rather than ourselves. We tend to grow like crazy during those times. And it's so chaotic and we feel so destabilized by the changes that are happening that anything we can do to remind ourselves of that growth is very powerful. So we may choose to make a milestone by saying, okay, you know what? Today is Look in the Mirror Day. I'm naming it Look in the Mirror Day 2024 because I just need to friggin' feel a little more faith. And we may choose to pick an amount of time to look back and open our journal or open our social media accounts or open our daybook or email or whatever and be like, what was going on for me 6 months ago? And try to recapture, how did I feel? What was I thinking about? What was on my mind? What was I struggling with? And often what happens, especially with that last question, what was I struggling with? we realize that that struggle has lessened or perhaps disappeared altogether. If I look back, and again, I've been in a bit of a tower moment this summer. If I look back even 1 month ago, there are things I was really struggling with that are simply not a struggle now because I just had to find a way to manage them. I had to find a way to function, and I did. And that's really powerful for me to look at because I look 1 month into the future and I still feel like, ah! I'm still looking into the future like it's chaos and I don't know what'll happen and I'm just trying to get by every single day. But if I can look back and be like, well, 1 month ago I was struggling with this and I found a way through, it's like, well, I'll probably find my way through the next month too, right? And if I take it back to 2 months, if I take it back to 6 months, and where I was 6 months ago was significantly more helpless and more hopeless feeling than where I am right now. And that is important for me to look at, to be like, well, I have taken my power back. Even though life is destabilized and crazy and chaotic, I've taken my power back. And I can continue to rise. I can continue to move through this time because I know it's worth it. And so I recommend doing this extra special right now for no reason other than you need it. If you are at a point in your life where you're like, I just need some faith. Again, that healthy kind of inward faith, believing that if we show up for change, we will get change. How can we look back effectively? How can we do this? First of all, when we create a milestone, our goal should be celebrating. It should be a what went great meeting, not a what went poorly meeting, right? The best kinds of growth don't actually come out of quote unquote constructive criticism. Often people do this, they'll have like a post-mortem after something like a recital or a performance or a big launch, and they'll be like, post-mortem, what went well, what went poorly. But if there's too much focus on what went poorly, we miss the memo that we just got through something huge. We should focus on what went well. Our brains will return to what went poorly and try to solve it for us again and again because the human brain is wired that way. Therefore, we should actually over-focus on what went well. I have a dear friend, her name is Nico. She puts on a recital for her students every year, and I am always there either running sound or as a stage manager. And every year, it's a milestone for the kids. It's a milestone for her as a self-employed music teacher. And there's this very positive atmosphere of growth, and there have been some powerful rituals that we have built into it that are supportive of us making this happen every year, and especially of her, because she's the one at the helm, right? Like, I'm just a helper. But one of the powerful rituals is we go out to dinner afterwards and we all talk about all the things that we noticed that went great. And if you've ever done something like run a complicated show, which is basically what a recital is, if you've ever done something like that, you know there are a million moving parts and you are just 50% following the plan, 50% reacting in the moment, right? And another 50% that just comes from somewhere of just like, smiling and trying to get through it and trying to look good while you're doing it, right? And that's 150%, but that's what it actually takes. It demands more of you than regular day-to-day life, considerably more. And so when you immediately follow that up with a chaser of everyone around you saying, I noticed this kid did so much better than last year, because I remember last year, like, wow, I noticed so much growth. I noticed that the way you carried yourself through that difficult moment where someone had the wrong microphone or something was really smooth and no one noticed it except for us who were behind the scenes. I noticed that blah, 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 blah. And when we take something like that, that's like a big stressful occasion, and follow it up with a chaser of self-celebration, of affirmation, we allow ourselves to see, oh, I do have grace under pressure. Instead of us going, I have no idea how I'll get through this, it's so overwhelming, I'm so nervous, we're like, I got through something really overwhelming. I get through the things going wrong when something was really overwhelming. Like, I can do this. I can adapt to wild things and get through and land on my feet. And cultivating that belief in ourselves that, yeah, I can land on my feet. I can get through a crisis. Allowing us, I can create something really big and complicated and pull it off, Allowing ourselves that belief in our ability helps us to have faith in ourselves that we'll be able to do more things like it, not the same thing again. We just did it, right? Instead, it helps us to have faith that the next thing that we're like, oh God, how am I going to pull this off? We're like, I didn't know how I was going to pull off that last thing, but I did. I don't know. I didn't think I was going to be able to pull it off leaving my day job, but I did. I didn't think I was going to be able to pull it off when suddenly all the electricity went off in the middle of the recital. This is a real thing that happened, and the sound cut out 100%, but I did. I didn't think I was going to be able to pull it off when I had to, at the last moment, leave a job with nothing else lined up, but I had to do it, but I did. You know, like when we show ourselves, oh, I got through these difficult times, we give ourselves this chaser of self-affirmation, and we realize I can get through difficult times again. It builds resilience. It builds hope. It builds personal faith. And I recommend when we're looking backwards that we not ask ourselves what went wrong and what went well. I recommend that the two most important questions to ask yourself are what went well, like list out, like brag like crazy to yourself. What went well, celebrate the hell out of them. And what was hard. Because when we have come through the other side, we have graduated, we have done the show, we have done the thing, we have left the day job, we have whatever it is. And we look back and go, that was so hard, but I'm here. That beautiful, palpable feeling of relief can fuel us moving forward into the next scary thing, can fuel us moving forward. We can look back on it and be like, I didn't know how I was going to get through that, but I did. So ask yourself, this is what we do during a milestone. What went great and what was hard? And how did I get through anyway? And then we get like really specific information, and it's delicious, right? And to give you an example, when the power cut out unexpectedly in the middle of a recital, every single one of us who was making that recital happen was internally screaming. And what Nico, my friend, did was simply make sure that the kids stopped performing because they didn't deserve to perform and not heard. She was like, we're having technical difficulties. It's no one's fault. And like told some jokes and like was a show person, right? Like embodied the magician and showed up in the moment and was like, we're going to get through this moment. And what I did as the person running sound was do a quick inventory of all the things that could cause the power to cut out. And because Nico had the stage handled, I could just apply my brain to that. And I did a quick process of elimination, realized that literally it must have come out of like the main master power strip must have like been kicked out of the wall by someone or something. And I told our stagehand, please go check that orange cord that's plugged into that outlet and see if it came out of the outlet. And she was like, it did. And then the power was back on. And it was solved in less than 90 seconds. And that kid didn't have like a really traumatic memory because all of the adults around them really handled it well and made sure that we put things on pause so that that kid could have a great performance. And each of us came out of it like, wow, that was hard. That was a roadblock that we would not have wanted to have faced, and we made it through. So we got this boost of like, wow, I made it through something that felt really terrifying. I was a feral screaming opossum, but we got it done together, right? And allowing ourselves to see that allows us to see like where our strengths are, how we can work with another person, what we can ask of another person in the moment, right? When things are hard. So it makes us better at handling hard things in the future. And it also, though, it builds us this faith in ourselves that, yes, I can handle this. And the next time something is really hard, we will remember, okay, I got through that time. I can probably get through this. And every iteration, we are able to get more and more calm and less activated as things occur to us. We gain that resilience. So that is why it is worth asking what was great and what was hard, and allowing ourselves to celebrate ourselves for both. And then we can look forward a little bit. And I recommend we not jump the gun to looking forward. Often at the end of a chapter, people do this with the death card in the tarot. Death represents the end. It does not represent a new beginning. The new beginning is what comes after. Death represents the end of a chapter. And the reason, and as does the world or the universe in a tarot deck, it's it's a different kind of ending, right? It's a little more, death is more sudden and abrupt. It's like, it's over now. Whereas the world or the universe is like, you kind of knew it was coming. Yes, this is the end of a chapter in your lives, right? And both of them are not about a beginning. They're about the ending. And I say that because when we skip over the ending, we skip over the opportunity to power our new beginning with what we really want. When we skip over reflecting at the end of a chapter, which is what a milestone is for, and saying what went well and what was hard and how did I handle it, when we skip over that, then we risk going for our new beginning, not having learned not just from our mistakes, but from our successes. That's where, when a relationship ends, we can rebound into something equally unhealthy just because we're lonely and stressed and we're like, new beginning time, right? Or we can give ourselves some time and loving energy to look back and ask ourselves what went well and what was hard so that we can put that energy into the next thing in a more healthy way, so that we can fail up, so that we can grow, or maybe not fail up, so that we can succeed up, right? Both things. So when we look forward, it should only be after we have looked back thoroughly and given ourselves this opportunity for self-celebration and self-acknowledgement and owning our accomplishments. And I recommend ritualizing this, and I recommend, if not doing it with friends, because sometimes it is a personal thing, I recommend taking time to still do communication. If you're with friends, being around a meal and everyone going around and like reflecting out loud, being at a table and doing that together can be very powerful for the group and their relationships, as well as for the confidence to move forward. You need to have that experience with yourself if it's a personal milestone. If you're like, well, okay, I'm looking at my personal milestone. You know, I've been in business for this many years. That's just me. I'm self-employed. Or I've done this many this many years of therapy, and now the nobody likes me are a helpful tool rather than a constant sense of dread and doom in my head, right? And giving ourselves the opportunity to do that might look like journaling, might look like doing something like a tarot reading, if that's helpful for you, might look like making a piece of art if we're a creative person, and giving ourselves that moment of reflection and really formalizing it and making it a good moment for ourselves really teaches our subconscious that we can get through hard things and that we have our own backs, and it's very, very worthwhile. Then from that place of power, I faced the dragon, right? From that place of power, like I did it, I got through. Then we can name our desires, and then our desires won't be like, oh God, I've been through so much, I just hope I can do anything, which is not an empowered point of view. Our desires can be like, I've been through a lot and I got through and I came out the other side. So, like, forget about playing small. What do I really want? Because I just did something big and I want to do something even bigger now, right? That is the vibe shift that milestones give us. And that is how to give us a review of how to make a milestone for yourself. We choose the milestone. It might be arbitrary. It might be us going like, I just need one right now, which is a really valid thing to do, by the way. And I highly recommend anytime you're feeling overwhelmed by life is like look backwards and make a list of your accomplishments and also a list of when things were hard and how you handled them. Or we can, tag it onto an existing milestone, a birthday, an anniversary, a holiday, what have you. You can do both. I recommend doing both. I recommend doing the things that feel personally meaningful to you. It's not your job to pay lip service to something that kind of never rang true with you. If you're not a New Year's person, don't do it. But if you are, do it, and do it your way, And if you're not, like, pick some other way to celebrate yourself. Like, own that truth of like, well, we could do this any day of the year, so pick one. Pick a day where it's really, I'm going to celebrate. And truly celebrate. Celebrate thoughtfully and mindfully and with an atmosphere of fun. So I've been really talking about the psychological aspects. How do we celebrate ourselves? We look back on what we did well, and we look back on what was hard. And then we own our accomplishments around both things, and we feel our feelings about it, right? Especially if we went through something really hard. If I'm a performer, if it's a big show or something, I might spend the whole show and I try not to, I've actually been working on this the last few years, but I might spend the whole show dissociated because it's so important to me that the part of my brain that's like, we just have to make everything go right is turned on, not the feelings part of my brain. And so I might look back and be like, wow, I got that really meaningful compliment from a friend, and choose to spend some time in my body feeling that right now. Because in the moment I was probably like, wow, thank you so much. That's amazing. And in my head, I was like, I have to make sure they know I'm grateful. Also, I have to make sure that I go back on stage at this amount of time. Also, I have to remember to check the mic cable, you know? And so we might choose to give ourselves a moment to feel our feelings, including the hard ones, including the ones where we're like, wow, my heart was in my throat, but I didn't have anything to do but just act at that time, right? The power cut out and I just had to find and solve the problem. I didn't have time for feelings. So we might choose to feel that feeling after knowing we've already gotten through it when it's a little safer, and be like, wow, that was scary, you know, and let it move through our body. Then we own our accomplishments. We celebrate ourselves. And I recommend doing this with whatever makes it special for you. You might get yourself a gift, you know, you might, Serena Hicks, who is somebody that I follow and I think is very inspiring, talks about how after her first ever like big launch, she got herself a gift to celebrate it. And she specifically got herself a tangible gift because she's like, if I get myself something that is physical and real, it's not about me being materialistic. It's about the fact that every time I look at it, I will remember my accomplishment. So she got herself, I think it was like either a jacket or a purse that she was like, had been coveting and was like fairly, you know, like expensive. And she's like, I made this money. I'm not like calculating a percent or whatever. I just know I've had my eye on this. I'm proud of myself. I'm getting it. And now every time she puts that item on, she remembers how she earned it for herself. And it's so powerful. And now it can remind her of her power, right? And so celebrate yourself. That might mean doing something like that, getting yourself a gift or creating yourself a gift. Creating art for yourself is wonderful if you're a creative person. Or even if you're not a creative person, guess what? Everybody gets to make art. You don't have to have a special gift. You're allowed to make art literally anytime. And it's very therapeutic and meaningful and fun. And you might find that you're not as bad as you think. So I just have to put that out there. You might choose to just to celebrate in the way that people have been celebrating for many, many, many years, which is like food and drink. You might cook yourself a special meal. You might take yourself out for a special meal. You might drink and toast to your success, whether it is an alcoholic or a sober toast, like choose your own adventure, right? There are many, many ways to celebrate. But give yourself something special that you can just associate with this accomplishment, with this milestone. So we've reached the part of the podcast where I give you a practical idea you can implement in your practice right now. And I encourage you, like, try this at home. We call this section of the podcast, Which You Got This. And so what I'm going to do is say to you, I'm going to invite you to do a DIY milestone right now. When my grandma, the title of this is Happy Nothing Day, because my grandma, who was a painter and a tarot reader and an opera singer and just like a really cool human being, she would hand paint us birthday cards on watercolor paper and send them to us. And usually there'd be some money inside, but it would also be like a piece of her art. You know, it was really special. And I think I still have somewhere a card from her. I hope I still have it. I can visualize it in my mind. A card from her that had a banner on the front of it, and the banner just said Happy Nothing Day. And I think inside was like $20 or something. But it was just the fact that she was like, Happy Nothing Day. Here's a card. Like, here's just like me taking a moment to let you know you fucking matter to me, right? She probably wouldn't have said you fucking matter to me to a child. But Happy Nothing Day. So I'm going to invite you to give yourself a Happy Nothing Day right now. I'm going to invite you to choose a day in the next week or so that you can say Happy Nothing Day to yourself and create your own milestone. And I specifically invite you to do it around something that is giving you struggle right now. If you've got a time in your life right now that feels like a tower moment and it's hard, or a goal you're working towards that feels hard, or something you're trying to overcome, or you have like emotions that are stressing you out right now, I recommend that you give yourself Happy Nothing Day around that. And I recommend that you follow the following process for your Happy Nothing Day. Number 1, you identify some time that you are going to celebrate Happy Nothing Day. Give yourself at least a couple of hours. Don't shortchange yourself. This isn't some like 10-minute bullshit. Give yourself a couple of hours. There's the explicit rating. I like maybe it's 4 to 7 on Tuesday, right? Like whatever it is, look at your schedule. It's my Happy Nothing Day celebration. I'm making the milestone right now. If you want to make it witchy, get yourself a candle or get some incense, plan a little ritual around it. Choose to thank yourself and perhaps any guides that you follow, but make sure you thank yourself. I'll be mad at you if you don't, because you deserve to be thanked. And maybe do some offerings. If you're into offerings, I love offerings. For me, offerings like enhance my personal spiritual practice energy, which is always like a slumber party with my guides. And offerings is like, yeah, we're going to have treats together. We're going to have snacks and gossip. Like, it's going to be fun. So maybe grab some offerings to yourself and to anything you wish, your ancestors, your guides, whatever, the spirit of adventure. Decide on something special that you will be maybe eating or drinking. And then your job is to do the equivalent of sitting around the table and talking about what went well and what you overcame. So you could do this as a journal entry. You could do this by drawing something for yourself or making a piece of art of any type. You could do this with a tarot reading. You could build your own or look up a tarot reading to celebrate, achievements or something like that, or success, because I'm sure the internet will give you one. And if you are a patron, that's going to be your bonus episode. I'm going to give you a tarot reading that you can use to celebrate a DIY milestone. And what you'll be doing at this time is you'll be looking back. You'll be asking yourself those two important questions. What went great? And celebrate the hell out of yourself. Like riff on that for as long as you can. And what was hard? And not just remember, like let yourself feel your feelings around it because it might be the first time you're getting to, but also acknowledge to yourself, wow, I faced that hard thing and I came out the other side and I lived through it, right? No matter how it went, I'm still alive. I'm still here, right? Like even if that, I don't know, electrical problem during my friend Nico's recital had maybe the electricity would have gone off for the whole rest of the day. Maybe there would have been a power outage and we would have had to find a way to DIY it. And we probably would have, even if it had gone much worse, right? At the end of the day, we would have still gotten through and found a way to get through and we would still be standing at the end. And so that's what we'd be celebrating, right? Instead, we got to celebrate, well, we all thought on our feet and it was solved inside of 90 seconds. Like, that's pretty good, What we're celebrating is I faced the hard thing and I'm still standing. And here's how I got through, and maybe identify some of the strengths that helped you do that. Like, okay, it was delegation. For me, I was like, hey, stagehand, go check this cable, right? It was also delegation for Nico, who knew that she had hired people to take care of sound, and so she could just vamp on stage while we managed the crisis. It wasn't just delegation, though. All of us, it was thinking on our feet, right? It was going like, okay, this happened. It was acceptance. Today, acceptance is the answer to all of my problems. It was accepting the situation and saying, here's a situation, therefore I will blank. And for Nico, it was vamp, and for me, it was run through a checklist in my mind of what could go wrong. And for that stagehand, it was follow instructions and save the day, which is great, And so we get these really great qualities. We realize, wow, I'm good at this thing. And this thing is what has allowed me to get through a crisis, and it might come in handy again, right? So do this for yourself. Give yourself a Happy Nothing Day celebration. Give yourself a couple hours to celebrate it. Make it a witchy ritual if you want to. Make some art or do some journaling. Make sure that you look back and ask yourself what went great and what was hard, and how can I celebrate the fact that I got through. And then at the end, when you have thoroughly celebrated yourself, when you have toasted yourself, when you have really shared how great you are with yourself, then we can begin to look at the next chapter. Then we can say like, okay, well, what do I like, knowing that I got through this, what do I actually want next? And that's very healing, especially if you're in a struggle bus kind of place, as some of us are this summer. If you're in a struggle bus place, you're not thinking about what do I want? You're thinking about how do I survive? And when you give yourself a milestone and ask yourself, how did I get through the hard stuff? And how did I accomplish the great stuff? We're no longer in survival mode. Our brain is now in dreaming big mode. And that is, let me tell you, a much more empowering and healthy place from which to live your life. So try this at home. Give yourself a Happy Nothing Day celebration. And I'll see you again soon. I want to thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If you like this podcast, I'm going to request that you rate it and review it wherever you listen to podcasts, because that really helps. It makes a big difference. If someone's like cruising around trying to find their next listen, seeing a review of like why it was meaningful to you will really help them make that choice. It's a really free, easy way to help a podcaster. And if you want to share it with someone who you think would love it, that would also be really super wonderful. If you would like to go super above and beyond and support this podcast financially and unlock exclusive benefits, you can do so at patreon.com/Sassafras Tarot for $1 per month or more. Patrons get access to extra content, personalized tarot pulls, a witchy Discord community, and more. And they also honestly like keep this podcast going. They give me the fuel, both emotionally and financially, to be like, yeah, I'm gonna put my time and energy into this, and I know that it's out there and it's being meaningful for something. I know that I'm creating something I'm meant to create in the world. So thank you, patrons. Thank you, everyone who is listening. Because if you're listening right now, I'm doing something right and I'm grateful for you. If you have a question, idea, or suggestion, or you just want to like shoot the shit with me about witchy stuff, you can email me anytime at sassafrastarot@gmail.com, and you can follow me on social media at Sassafras Tarot on Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok. And if you would like to order a reading, you can do so at my Linktree. Linktree is linktr.ee/Sassafras Tarot, and that will give you the links to do so. And Sassafras Tarot are two words that are very difficult to spell, so I'm going to spell them for you. Type this anywhere to find me. SassafrasTarot. Sassafras Tarot. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, friends. I will see you again next month. As always, remember to be kind to yourself, and I hope you celebrate a happy nothing day. Let me know how it goes. Bye!